Good evening, Keith Tebow with you as we wrap up the day today in the trial of former Fall River Mayor Jasiel Correia. I'm pleased to be joined, as I was yesterday, with Dan Medeiros from the Herald News. Dan, how are you tonight?
I'm very good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for joining me. It was a short day today. The trial wrapped up just around noontime. And actually, the trial pretty much wrapped up in terms of the testimony. The prosecution presented one more witness, an IRS investigator, which we can get into a little bit. And then the prosecution rested its case. And then the defense attorney, Kevin Rennington, began his evidence to present to the jury. He had three witnesses, and then he rested his case. So in effect, the testimony part of the trial is over. And I guess, Dan, when we look at what happened, it's not necessarily who testified, but who didn't. We were talking yesterday about the possibility of having David Hebert testify, again, one of those co-conspirators in the case who pled guilty. And the insinuation was he was going to testify for the prosecution, and also Jen Andre, the former chief of staff. Neither one of those two testified. And on the defense side, the defendant himself, former Mayor Correia, did not testify. So I guess, is there anything you can glean from those decisions today?
Well, I was surprised, actually, that Jen Andrade and Dave Hebert didn't testify. I thought it might even be conditional as a part of their plea agreements, but I suppose not. Earlier in the day, we were sort of wondering internally if maybe Jen Andrade hadn't testified because witnesses are supposed to be sequestered, and it had been seen on the Zoom throughout the earlier days in the trial. Someone had been logged in as Jen's iPhone, spelled Gen iPhone. So we thought, well, could it be that maybe she's not testifying, or maybe that she's... If you break a sequester, you can suffer one of a number of different penalties based on the judge's discretion. One of them is that you just won't be allowed to testify. So we thought maybe it could be something like that. But reporter Joe Good, who's been covering it and is in Boston, she seems to think that Jen wasn't on the witness list at all, ever. But we kept hearing that she might be, so I don't know.
Yeah. What about Dave Hebert, and maybe why he didn't come forward?
That's another one. I'm not sure. I thought it would also be conditional based on his plea agreement. I thought he might have to, but I suppose not. And when it came to Jasiel testifying, again, that was always up in the air. I know often in these cases, like, defendants often don't. And like I was saying yesterday, if I were him, I would probably want to testify, because I know he tends to be, from what I understand, very confident about his public speaking abilities and ability to persuade an audience. He wouldn't have gone into politics otherwise. So I would think he would have wanted to. But I suppose not. Other people who didn't testify also, who were potential witnesses, were Jasiel's father, Jasiel F. Correia, the first, and his grandmother. I believe they were also... Joe said they were prosecution witnesses, so they didn't end up testifying. And I know they had also been sequestered from the rest of the proceedings.
Yeah, they were not in the courtroom as part of the family for the former mayor. So so there's a lot of questions that I don't know if the attorneys will be asked this later on. We'll have to wait and see. But in terms of the testimony today, the final prosecution witness again was an IRS investigator that we saw early on the Snow Owl part of the testimony, and she came back today in terms of the testimony to kind of tie things together. And there was a lot brought up today about some of the purchases that the former mayor made, as well as Jen Andrade's contract and the money that she allegedly gave back to the mayor, half of her salary, right?
Right. Yeah. She laid out a rather devastating case, I would say, because she had bank records from Jen Andrade and Jasiel Correia showing, it was arranged in a sort of back and forth manner on this spreadsheet that she had that showed direct deposits made to Jen Andrade's personal account, which were her paychecks for working for the city of Fall River. And then a day or a couple of days later, sometimes even the same day, checks would be written out from her account, deposited to, made out to Jasiel Correia, deposited into his account for about half of the money that she had earned. It was with her paychecks or weekly paychecks. It was also done with the snow stipend as well. It doesn't really look great because the way she testified about it, because at one point the prosecution said, so basically she got a check and then she wrote a check to Jasiel Correia, and she testified, yes, that's correct. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see. In terms of the defense witnesses, there were 3 today. And when you looked at the 3 witnesses, it was sort of, I'm going to call it tangential to the case, sort of on the periphery of the case, in terms of someone that was talking about, again, the Snow Owl app and the application. There was a representative from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance to talk about the former mayor's legal defense fund. And there was a clerk from the Corporation Counsel office. What do you think the defense was trying to do by just bringing those people up?
Don't really know. I know,
right.
In some ways, I think he was trying to patch what seemed to me rather minor holes in the case. And I don't know how well how effective they were at doing that. I mean, I know John Carrero, who was the person testified in relation to Snow Owl, he was almost trying to prove a point that the prosecution hadn't made, really, which is his point was that Snow Owl could have been fixed, and it could have been a thing that had value in the future or whatever. Right. Which I don't really know if the prosecution was necessarily trying to make that case that it couldn't ever be fixed. I mean, anything can be fixed. Any bit of software, if you put enough money into it, of course it'll operate. The point is not that. The point is whether or not he was using this app as a means to get money from investors and then spend it on himself, and was not really all that serious about fixing it. No, it's not. The point is not whether or not it couldn't be fixed. It's that he didn't. With the other ones, again, I think those were probably a little bit more effective, maybe, because Sarah Hartree of the OCPF was saying that that Jasiel was unaware that certain donations had been made to his political campaign. Although, again, it's maybe he. It'll be up to the jury to decide whether or not they believe her, or if they will still think, well, he made the offer. He knew that they were offering to donate to his campaign. So, I mean, I don't know. And then Carla Dutra, who was the former legal secretary for Joe Macy, who drafted the letters, her testimony was that the letters that Charles Salibi had testified were handed to him in person. She testified that she actually mailed those letters. I mean, people mail a lot of letters. I mean, especially if you're in an office that deals with a lot of these things. I mean, we've already heard there were something like 14 marijuana companies that wanted letters of non-opposition and HCAs. So, I mean, it'll be up to I mean, she may be right. I don't know. He may be wrong. I don't know. Whatever. But it'll be up to the jury to decide whether or not her memory is fresher or his is fresher. I don't know.
Yeah, and it also could be, in this instance, that both sides could be right, in terms of the mayor may have given a letter to Mr. Salibi while the Corporation Counsel's office sent it to, the attorney, right? So it could have, I guess it could have both happened. So anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. It also could be that, he may have had to send duplicate versions of the letter. So maybe she did send a copy to his attorney. I don't know. That's a possibility.
Yeah. So moving forward, the jury went home, as I said, about noontime today. They're actually not coming back till Monday now. The attorneys will be meeting with the judge tomorrow to talk a little bit about the counts and to sort of, I guess, get the Judge Woodlock's mind in lockstep in terms of how he's going to be charging the jury on the case next week. And then Monday will be closing arguments. And I guess the plan is still for the jury to get the case on Tuesday. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, that's about right. Although, I mean, depending on how long the closings are, they may even get it on Monday.
Right.
But either Monday or Tuesday, one of those. But yeah, as far as I know, tomorrow will just be just between the attorneys and the judge, trying to figure out how exactly to give directions to the jury.
Right.
A lot of these charges are very, very narrow, really specific. Wire fraud charges are really specific in this case. So they're going to have to, I mean, you have to prove intent to defraud at the point of, or a point just before the whatever communication was sent. So they're going to have to make sure that the prosecution is going to have to make sure they're proving that part of the case, not that maybe he thought of doing it afterward. And again, it all relates to 9 very, very specific instances of communications. So it'll be tricky to explain.
Yeah, but I'm sure Judge Woodlock has dealt with this quite a bit, as we talked about yesterday. He's been on the bench for quite some time. I want to just wrap up our
fraud cases before too. So.
Right. I want to just wrap up our conversation today to talk a little bit about how the Herald is covering this case. There's been 4 names on the byline for the stories. Joe Good, who has broken a lot of these stories since this all began, I believe is in Boston. And then you've got yourself, Editor-in-Chief Lynn Sullivan, and also Linda Murphy working back in the home office, if you will, in your own home offices, if you will.
Yeah, this is my home.
Yeah, so talk about how you're all working together to make sure that you're providing good coverage on this for the people.
Right. Well, Joe again has been working on this since 2016. Since the summer of 2016, she's been at least researching it and investigating it. She started writing it, I believe, in 2017, writing stories about it. So she's been, most days she's in Boston covering it. If she's not, if they're only allowing a certain number of people in the courtroom at one time because of COVID restrictions. So either she's in the waiting room with other reporters, or if she's part of the pool, in the pool rotation on a certain day, then she can be actually in the courtroom. And she's been there most days. Most days she ends up in Boston. 1 or 2 days, I think she's been at home. Myself and Linda and Lynn, we're all at home in our respective houses, and we're just following along on Zoom. And I tend to be the one who tweets a lot. I'm basically live tweeting the entire thing. And Linda is behind the scenes in this sort of like internal chat system we have with Microsoft Teams. She's doing more or less the same thing, but fleshing it out a little bit more, grabbing stuff that I tweet and putting it together. Lynn is also doing the same thing. She's sort of merging what I tweet and what Linda writes in Teams, putting it all together, adding links and photos. And, then she's posting that on a live blog on heraldnews.com. We're also at the same time as all of this is going on, we're also constantly having chats back and forth all day about new angles. What are we going to do for this weekend, the days coming forward? So we're pretty much in constant communication all day from about 9:30 until 5. Just planning stuff out and talking back and forth.
Yeah, and I know that one of the good things about the paper, and I'm actually saying the word paper in terms of what the Herald News has been able to do is, from what I understand, the print schedule of the paper for these number of weeks has been delayed, so you can actually get updated information in the print version of the paper, because in the past, I believe you've had very early print deadlines before the trial day even ended. So you're able to share that with your entire audience at the Herald News. So that's important as well, right?
Well, actually, no. Actually, our print deadline is the same.
Oh, okay.
Our print deadline is 5:30 p.m., which
Okay.
is not very long after the final gavel usually. So, and I am the one who's been putting the paper together, like in terms of the front page and the jump pages and stuff.
Right.
So while I'm also tweeting, I'm also
Right.
starting to lay out the rest of the front page. I'm putting stories on and photos. And usually around, when at 4 o'clock, 4:15, 4:30, whenever court wraps up, that's when they start working even more furiously than before to come up with just something that we can use for print. And what we have been using is Joe or a Lynn or any combination of a bunch of us, mostly Joe, has been writing like a story that sort of wraps up everything in one shortish kind of package. Then we top the blog with that, and then I take that whole thing. I export it to my page, put it on the page, and I just print as much of it as I possibly can. And I try to condense it as much as possible because we're trying to give people the most value they can for their $2 every single day.
Yeah,
Like you might not
no
be
doubt
able to
about it.
like read all of it, but I'm just going to try to give you as much as possible.
Yeah, so for those people who really want to follow it, you're giving them everything, soup to nuts, background information, some things that are said that may not make, I'll be honest with you, it wouldn't make my newscast because I have a shorter period of time to do things. But you're putting it all out there online and in the paper, and that's great. So this is sort of how the sausage is made at the Herald.
Yes.
During this time of the year and during this trial. All right, Dan, I appreciate your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll try to catch up on Monday after the closing arguments, and we'll give a wrap up of that on Monday. So have a great weekend. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, and thank you for joining us here on FRC Media. Have a great day.